The diner was one of those places that looked like it hadn't changed in 50 years. Red leather booths with cracked seams, the smell of bacon grease clinging to the walls, a jukebox in the corner with faded buttons no one touched anymore. Every morning at 7 a.m., without fail, Walt Henderson sat at the counter. He was 81 years old, a Korean War veteran, his hands shaky but still steady enough to stir his coffee. Walt had been coming to Rosie's diner since before most of the staff were even born. He came partly out of habit, partly because he didn't have anywhere else to go. Life had been hard since his wife passed away 6 years earlier. The house they'd shared felt hollow. His daughter had moved far away, busy raising her own family. And though Walt still had a son, Jack, they hadn't spoken much in years. Choices, tempers, and time had driven a wedge between them. Still, here in this small diner, Walt found comfort. The waitresses called him Mr. Henderson, with affection. They knew his order: black coffee, scrambled eggs, and rye toast. They even slipped him an extra slice of bacon when the manager wasn't looking. To Walt, it was the closest thing left to family. That morning, as Walt stirred his coffee, the bell above the diner door jingled. A young man stormed inside, shaved head, tattoos crawling up his neck, the kind of restless energy that spelled trouble. He walked with a swagger that demanded attention, even though no one wanted to give it. The young man, his name was Kyle, though no one here cared to know it, shoved his way past an elderly woman in the aisle. Her coffee sloshed dangerously close to spilling. "Watch it," she gasped. Kyle smirked. "Maybe you should move faster, Grandma." The diner went still. Walt looked up from his coffee, steel in his old blue eyes. His voice, though cracked with age, carried the weight of a man who had once led others into battle. "Hey, son," Walt called evenly. "That's no way to talk to a lady." A hush fell over the room. A fork clinked against a plate and then silence. Kyle turned, eyes narrowing. "What did you say, old man?" Walt set down his spoon and looked him straight in the eye. "I said, show some respect." The waitress at the counter froze, her hands gripping the coffee pot. She knew Walt's history. She knew he was fearless, but she also knew this young man had no respect for anyone. Kyle's sneer grew. "Respect? You're just a fossil. Nobody cares what you think." Walt didn't flinch. "I fought for your freedom long before you were born. The least you can do is remember your manners." Something snapped. Kyle stormed forward, standing over Walt. The old man stayed seated, shoulders squared, eyes steady. For a long moment, no one breathed. And then Kyle raised his hand. The slap cracked through the diner like a gunshot. Walt's head jerked to the side, his glasses slipping down his nose. A gasp rose from every corner of the diner. For a moment, time froze. Walt steadied himself, blinking slowly, a red mark blooming on his weathered cheek. The door jingled again, and in walked 3 men. Big men, leather vests, heavy boots, tattoos peeking from under sleeves. Across their backs, in bold patches, the name that made Kyle's smirk falter: Hell's Angels. Leading them was Jack Henderson, Walt's son. The years had changed him. His beard was thick, his frame powerful, his eyes sharp. He carried himself with the kind of presence that silenced a room without a word. His gaze swept the diner, landing first on his father, the red mark on his cheek, then on Kyle, still standing too close, his bravado already fading. Jack's voice was low, steady, dangerous. "Who just laid a hand on my dad?" Kyle stumbled back a step. I didn't know he was your old man," he stuttered. He was mouthing off. He needed to learn. Jack slammed a fist on the counter, rattling the dishes. "No, you needed to learn." The 2 other angels flanked Jack, their presence alone enough to make the air heavy with tension. The waitress backed away, her heart pounding. Everyone in the diner was frozen, but their eyes were wide with awe. Jack stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Kyle. "You don't touch him, not ever." Kyle's mouth opened, but no words came. The swagger, the smirk, gone. All that remained was fear. Jack grabbed him by the collar, pulling him close enough to whisper, though everyone heard it clear as day. "You're gonna apologize to him, loud enough for every soul in here to hear." Kyle's throat bobbed. I'm sorry, sir," he muttered. "Louder," Jack barked. "I'm sorry," Kyle shouted, his voice cracking. Jack shoved him back. "Now get out before I make sure you never come back." The thug stumbled toward the door, tripping over himself in his rush to escape. The bell above the door jingled one last time, and then he was gone. For a long moment, silence hung heavy in the diner. Then, slowly, people began to breathe again. The waitress rushed to Walt with a napkin, her hands trembling. But Walt waved her off gently. He looked at his son, the son he hadn't seen in years. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. Jack's hardened face softened. He knelt down beside his father, the weight of years in his eyes. "Yes, I did. I know I wasn't around, Dad. I know I let you down. But nobody gets to hurt you while I'm still breathing." Walt's eyes grew wet. He had worried about Jack's path in life, about the rough choices that had led him into the world of the Hells Angels. But in that moment, sitting in a diner with a red mark on his cheek, all he saw was the boy he had raised, fierce, loyal, and protective. Jack motioned to the waitress. "Bring him whatever he wants. On me, and pour him another coffee." The diner slowly came back to life, but a new kind of energy hung in the air. People whispered to one another, their respect for Walt deepened, their admiration for Jack undeniable. Walt reached across the counter, his frail hand gripping his son's arm. "I'm proud of you, Jack," he whispered. Jack smiled, a rare, unguarded smile. "And I'm proud to be your son." That morning, Rosie's Diner wasn't just a place for bacon and eggs. It became a place where an old man found his son again, where strangers witnessed the bond between father and son, and where a community was reminded that respect, for the old, for the brave, for each other, is something worth fighting for. And maybe, just maybe, every person who left that diner carried a little more kindness in their heart. If this story touched you, remember, acts of loyalty and love are what keep the world from falling apart. For more powerful stories that restore faith in humanity, make sure to like, share, and subscribe.